Hi, I'm Lori.
And I'm Kevin, and this is No Longer Ashamed.
We are survivors of childhood sexual abuse.
And we're here to share with you that if you're a survivor, you don't have to be alone.
Our logo is a salamander, and the reason is a fire salamander can survive a fire, and you have survived a fire.
We want to help you with your journey to healing and hope.
We are all survivors together, and we walk this journey together, and you are not alone.
By telling our stories, we are hoping that you will have the courage to share your stories as well and find your voice.
Because stories are so important, and for so long I know that I wouldn't tell my story, but when I finally shared my story, that's when I got my freedom.
And this is our journey and your journey to healing and hope. So come with us.
Today we want to talk about the holidays.
The holidays. Yeah, especially since we talked about triggers last time.
Right,
and talk about triggers.
And holidays, I mean, normally it's a big gathering. This year, everything's so weird.
Yeah, everything's changed.
Yeah.
Which isn't necessarily a bad thing for some people.
Yeah.
Because I know for me, sometimes the holiday gatherings were really difficult due to the family dynamics and how I had to basically be a participant, even though it wasn't easy to be a participant.
Right. So you have to kind of shut down. I have this holiday story. It's not really about abuse, but it shows how people don't listen. So I was probably 6, and it was a holiday at a relative's, and I had stepped on a tack. And my foot hurt, but I wasn't old enough to understand that whatever was hurting my foot was still in it. And I went out to the adults, and I went to my favorite uncle, Uncle Lauren. And he's like, oh yeah, not, pats me on the head, go play. So I go back and play, and then I come back, I'm like, Dad, my foot hurts. Oh yeah, go play. I mean, this went on. I came out probably 4 or 5 times. Then finally somebody looks at my foot and goes, oh my gosh, you have a tack in your foot.
Oh no.
But it just shows you, when the whole family's together, there's this whole different dynamic than when it's just your core family. And I feel like even though COVID is going to be different, how we celebrate holidays, that it's important to bring it up because there's just certain guilt. There's certain things that kind of manifest, and I don't know if it's like causes a trigger, but for me, I had to work really hard at not dissociating, not checking out.
Yeah, I basically would just automatically. Because it was
you
how
probably
I survived.
Didn't even know what you were doing.
Yeah, it was just how I got through, and it wasn't until later that I realized I was just checking out, and I had to start forming boundaries. I think that's my main emphasis for the holidays for this podcast is know what you need, know what your boundaries are, find a safe way. Like we talked about when we break the secret, your family dynamics change. You have to discover what is safe for you, what works for you. And it may not be what the rest of your family or, your friends can deal with, but it's important for you to have that safety, to have those boundaries so you can function, so you can get through this.
Right. And even if a person isn't your abuser, but like they're that drunk, they're that handsy drunk, that is going to set you off. Mm-hmm. And people are like, oh, that's just Uncle Joe. He always does that. But that doesn't mean it's okay.
No. Yeah.
And it's okay for us to have boundaries around that.
Yeah. And also sometimes at holidays, everyone wants to talk about so-and-so or, someone who's not there, that maybe there's a reason they're not there. And if you're not comfortable around that, you don't have to participate.
Yeah.
You don't have to be, subject yourself to all of this just because it's the holidays and it's family tradition. It really is important to realize what matters as far as your healing is concerned rather than what matters for the family tradition, to uphold all the stuff that families, the cycle continues. We ignore what was going on before because we have to uphold all these family traditions
And
or family
secrets.
secrets.
So also, like, sometimes the abuser is the favored child or the golden child, and it may not be sexual abuse. It might be just verbal or physical or being mistreated. And so then you've got this golden child, and everybody wants to talk like, oh, he's like a movie star now, and isn't he awesome? And you're sitting there going, no, he's the one who is so awful to me. You know, it's all of these kind of things come up when we're in a family gathering. And if we haven't been able to come out with our story, we still have to be able to protect ourselves.
Yeah, and that's why the COVID might be kind of
I
a
know.
blessing. The COVID holidays might actually be a blessing in disguise because
Yeah.
we get to set boundaries. We get to determine, how safe we want to be and what works for us. And so this could be like a test run for how do you feel safe and comfortable and, what works for you. And you can start this year and then use it as a test run. I wish I had it many years ago when I wanted to just check out of family gatherings, but
Right.
this is your excuse, so take advantage now. But no, seriously, holidays, I think, is a trigger for a lot of us, mainly because we're, stuck with dealing with a bunch of people that we may or may not want to be dealing with. And also we have to, be nice and act like we're happy.
Right. And if you haven't been believed and that person is there, then that causes this whole just for you, it's like people just go on with the holiday, but you are like, nobody believed me and this person,
Yeah, they're being treated the same.
Yeah.
So, holidays, I think, and there's kind of the holidays before you talked about, before you broke the silence, before you,
Right.
Actually brought this up.
Yeah.
Holidays are one way because you're kind of forced to be there and struggle through it. And then after you break the silence, after you change the family dynamics, then you have to come up with a new way of holidays.
Right.
And how do you do that? And how does the rest of the family handle that?
And then there's also this thing is if you do have a strong boundary and the rest of the family chooses to be with that person that you choose not to be around,
Yeah.
then that makes it hard. And it's like then you maybe are spending your holiday alone because you had that hard boundary, but that still is hard because then it's like, well, they're all with that person. They're all with dad or,
It's like they're choosing them
Right.
over you. They're choosing the tradition rather than dealing with what happened and
Exactly.
actually handling it in a healthy way.
Right.
They just want to act like nothing ever happened.
Right. When I finally told my mom and I said I would have nothing to do with my dad, then I'm not kidding you. The next day she called and said, okay, can you come over for, I think it was Memorial Day. We're going to have a big barbecue. And I'm like, at your house with dad? Yeah. I'm like,
Yeah.
what did we just talk about?
They want to pretend like it really didn't matter or
Yeah.
it doesn't matter. They
Right.
want to pretend like, well, what matters is our family
Right.
and everything that, we stood for before.
Right. And often, like a step parent, if the step parent's abusive and the mom continues to choose that step parent, then, there's just so many scenarios that can cause so much grief. And I think the most important thing is to know what you know about yourself and find that self love so that if you can't be with family because they're not healthy, that rather than feeling left out, you're feeling empowered because you made that choice.
Yeah. And so holidays are a good time to redefine your family dynamics, to find out what is healthy for you, what is safe for you.
Right.
And not everyone was abused by a family member. Sometimes it's someone else.
Right.
Generally, it is someone that...
But isn't there always an Uncle Joe?
Yeah.
Isn't there always the handsy drunk uncle?
Yeah, one of them. But it might be someone they know or,
Right.
so it doesn't always affect you in the holidays. But for a lot of people, holidays can be really rough. And
Right.
so this is the opportunity to find out how do you handle the dynamics? How do you set your boundaries in a way that makes it safe for you, but you can still enjoy your family?
Right. And then that is so powerful and so good. But then there's this other element of if you are getting together with family and you have a child that is really adamant about somebody in your family, not wanting to be around them, just really, we have to listen and believe.
Yeah.
Even if it's like, but that's my brother, or that's my, that's my favorite uncle, is like, we don't want to perpetrate a secret. And so if there is something going on and a child comes or is like, I don't want to go, and it's different than I want to stay home and play video games.
Yeah.
That it's hard because when it's our family, we personally want to sweep it under the carpet. So actually believing and listening to a child that is obviously uncomfortable with certain family members, which could happen at a holiday.
That's so important because we might not be aware of what they're going through. We might not be aware of what has happened to them, and they might not be able to put that into words necessarily or explain it in a way that we understand, other than they just don't like being around them or they don't feel happy about it.
Right.
So if that's going on, it's very important to pay attention to that.
Yeah.
But the other thing about holidays is we get to find our own family. We get to decide who we really care about and who are important in our lives. And sometimes family isn't necessarily blood family.
Yeah.
Sometimes family is more about who we care about, who cares for us, who actually we trust and believes us.
I think that's why Friendsgiving is so popular.
Yeah.
But I think, what was that? Somebody coined the phrase, family isn't necessarily blood, it's who you choose.
Yeah, I think holidays are a good time to choose who we really consider family.
And make new traditions.
And this being the year of...
I just have to say this, Kevin. What you said in the beginning really hit me, because sometimes when things like are bad, like COVID's bad, that the blessing is it forces us to redefine. So even gifts, like normally at work, I would get little gifts for everybody, but nobody's at work. I'm not going to mail them, and I'm going to save a little money this holiday season. It is like redefining, and that it's okay. And one of the things, I love Dr. Caroline Leaf, and she talks about the brain, is like we get to choose. We get to think, feel, and choose. And as adults, it's like, okay, let's use COVID to find out what we want to do. For me, Thanksgiving was only me and my son. And that was really weird, but it was really okay.
Yeah. You got to spend, one-on-one time.
Right, because the other kids are in another state. And so I think, this is kind of off the subject of abuse, but on the other hand, it's like, do we want to live in this place of this like negative of, the family and, or do we want to take control and decide what we want and how we want it and take charge, so that we are not the victim of the whole family? So maybe we've been victimized by someone in the family, but then by having to be with the whole family, then we're kind of victimized all over again.
Yeah, and not only that, we're forced to put up a face and not face reality, so to speak. We're forced to fake it.
Right, and disassociation is a good thing because it helped us survive. But in order to thrive, we have to stay in the present. So if we haven't set boundaries, and if we haven't been able to tell our story, then we're going to go into that dissociation, and which puts us into survival mode, which, as we know, the amygdala is the fight or flight, or now they're saying freeze, flight, fight, or freeze. And we don't want to spend our holidays like that.
No. What I remember the most was just tuning out and then looking forward to, as soon as I got away from my family, getting wasted. So, basically, just finding a way of coping with it afterwards by checking out. And after I set my boundaries, after I kind of made it real clear stance of what I could and could not do and would not, it made it so much more meaningful to be around my family after that, because I was around the people I chose to be with, really cared about them, wasn't afraid of talking about things with them. And eventually, I did forgive my perpetrator, and I'm able to be around him now without having issues. And holidays are special because I took the steps to take care of myself and protect myself. I was able to be open to actually enjoying them rather than dreading them.
Which then you had a few good holidays with your mom.
Yeah.
For me, it was a total break. And so I wasn't able to be with part of my family. And I just remember when Mike was talking about, his dad and how he couldn't have relationship with him. And that it's so great that we can know that even if we forgive, that doesn't mean we have to be in the same room with that person, that we always have choice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's important to make the choice that works for you and not settle just because other people aren't happy about your choice.
Yeah.
We have to make sure we're protecting ourselves, we're taking the stand that we need to take, and eventually you might be able to change, you might be able to adjust. It doesn't have to be set in stone. It doesn't have to be permanent.
Right. There might be 1 year off.
Yeah.
Where you don't get with the family.
And so this is the perfect year
to
test drive what works well.
So, the difference between an introvert and an extrovert is the extrovert gets refueled by being around people, and the introvert gets refueled about being alone. It really isn't like you look at somebody who's outgoing. So I work in radio. I'm very outgoing, and I can walk in a room. I can do what I need to do, but I'm actually very introverted. So I didn't really get that until COVID hit. And I'm like, I am digging being alone. and I'm thinking, oh no, what are we going to do when we have to go everywhere again, when we have to engage? But, one thing before we go is I want to talk about your wedding. And I think what I really appreciated in our interview is when you said you were going to get married, you wanted the family there, and your wife is like, how is this going to happen? And that suddenly you kind of had to take charge of what you wanted. And I love that it was like you weren't going, oh no, we're going to have to put up with this. You're like, you turn it around to, okay, this is what I want, so this is how we have to make it happen.
And I think that's the healthy way of dealing with it. It was for me. I knew I wanted my whole family there, but at that time I still had issues and still had to have boundaries, and I knew it, and I knew I couldn't deal with it, so I just set out on figuring out how I can address it.
Right. And the last thing you want to do is check out at your wedding.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? But I love it that you guys were on top of that.
Mm-hmm.
And that was so healthy.
And that's led to where I am now as far as being in a relationship with him, in a healthy relationship with him. And
which is rare.
And it's a blessing.
But wonderful.
It is a blessing because I love my family. They're messy.
Thank goodness.
There's
Can't
a
stand
lot
those
of
perfect families.
Yeah, but I still love them all, and I love that I'm able to be with my family and share, and I love that my mother got to
witness
the reconciliation.
Yeah.
I think that was really good for her and important for her, and I'm very thankful for God's guiding me through that. So,
I remember a few times when we tried to tell my mom like simple things like, Mom, did you know when Grandpa babysat us, he would go in the bar and leave us in the car and throw us a what do you call those, Orange Crush?
I love those.
And she would say, no, he didn't. Right. So I'm so glad that with your family, even though it was hard and it was a process to work through, that you did, rather than that denial of that didn't happen. Right.
Yeah, I'm very thankful that there wasn't denial.
Right.
I think there were circumstances that kind of led to that, but in any case, I'm thankful that we all acknowledge what happened and we've kind of worked through it.
Right. So some scenarios is you can work it out and be with your family, or maybe you can't be with your family, but you choose your friends that are your family. Yeah. And so it's just like during the holidays, take care of yourself. Don't put everybody else first. take care of what you need, what's important for you to get through, and do some good self-care.
Yeah, and pay attention to what the holidays were like in the past. You know, did you have issues? Did you have problems? Were there people that really upset you? Did you always have to, like me, go out and get wasted afterwards because you were recovering from being around your family?
Or like me, a good Christian, so you can't.
Yeah, well...
I mean, in those days, for me, that was not an option. So you just have to stuff it and,
Think about what the holidays mean as far as for you, what it means. Do you dread them? Do you look forward to them? Are there certain things that always seems to be a problem?
Mm-hmm.
And what can you do about that?
Right. And what do you want? And I'm always harping on this. I have a friend whose husband has been very sick. And for 40 years, I have told her to journal. And she said to me the other day, oh, I wish I had been journaling, because her husband's been sick. And had she been journaling, she would have had an idea when all this started to kind of slip a little. So journal. Yeah. And the thing is that when we're thinking about things in our head, it bounces around. It's almost like a super ball, remember those?
Yeah.
It just bounces. But when we journal or we speak it, then all of a sudden it can go into the filing cabinet. Suddenly it has a place to be. So journaling or finding a counselor, a coach, a friend that you can really talk to is going to make a huge difference for you.
Putting it into words really changes it. Journaling, sometimes I have a hard time journaling because I'm very picky about how I write things and what I write and how I write them, and
you
kind
overthink it.
Yeah, I do, but I like it. I like it. I like the written word.
I teach a writing class, and I'm like, don't overthink it. Just let go of the editor and write, and worry about all the other stuff later.
I need to learn that. Yeah. But what I've learned that helps me is on my little iPhone. I love these phones that we occasionally use as a phone. There's a little message where you can just record messages. And if things, I'm thinking about stuff, I journal in the message. I just talk about things. But putting it into words really helps, and helps you define it, and also helps you realize, I've never even said that before.
Right.
Sometimes I've had a few revelations where it's like, wow, I didn't realize I thought that, or, that was... because I've never really said that before,
right,
but it's so obvious. It's such a big deal.
Yeah.
So put it into words, whatever works for you.
And that's doing the work. And, I'm just so intrigued by the story and how important the story is. And that by telling our story, other people know they're not alone. But writing your story, it's like, it is so important to do that kind of work, even if it's hard, is write it down, tear it up and burn it if you need to, if it's too painful, but get it out of your head.
Keep it safe, however, whatever that means for you, as far as if you don't want to share it with your spouse or someone. Or
women that are in very controlling, abusive relationships, they can't journal.
Yeah, they can't. They don't have that option, but you can message it, and there's options. You could
find a secret code language. But definitely, it's like, get it out of your head, tell your story. And, I love what Kevin said, is like, even if you can only tell a piece of it, tell piece by piece. And the more you hear yourself say it, it's not like it normalizes, because we don't want it to be normalized, but it's like, oh, that's real. Oh, I can believe me.
You put it into truth. I don't know how else to say it. You bring the truth out. Sometimes if we don't ever talk, if we don't ever vocalize it, don't ever write it down, we don't believe it as a truth.
Right. And with COVID, if you're living alone, you don't talk.
Yeah.
See, I live alone, and I get up in the morning, I have coffee. We don't talk on the phone anymore. We always text. And sometimes I don't talk until I get to work at like 3:00. And so that's why it is so important, because it's really easy to be silent and we don't even know that that's what's happening. But, if we don't have a partner to talk it out with, or a friend or a roommate, writing is the next best thing. Or like you say, talking it into notes that will write themselves, as like, it used to be called Dragon or something.
Yeah. Yeah, or, I've tried editing those, but mostly just listening to them again is really helpful, just to kind of have, and part of journaling isn't necessarily to have a permanent record,
Right.
but just to bring that stuff up and put it into words.
Right. If you burned it every day, that would be okay, because you're at least getting it out.
You're vocalizing it. Something that, when I was a kid, I couldn't do because I didn't have the words for it.
Right. There's a gal that talks about creativity, and Julian Camera, and she has The Artist's Way. And she says to write 3 pages a day, like especially when you're going through something, even if you have to go blah, 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 blah. You just write that, because if you keep going for 3 pages, suddenly something will start to come out. And it's pretty amazing if you can do it. And even if you do it for a season of healing, don't look at it as like, now I have to do this forever, or I have to do it a certain way, or I have to do periods and paragraphs. No, you just do it. Write with your wrong hand if you need to. It's not about being perfect. It's just about getting it out.
Yeah. That process of letting the words flow,
right?
That no one's, you've never spoken or talked about.
And, I know we need to wrap this up, but here's something. People don't listen. And I teach a coaching class, and I love it because when the kids, the students are coaching each other, you can see the one who's asking the question just wanting to give advice, but they know that I'm sitting there and I'm teaching them how to ask questions. And so they have to keep asking questions until that person has told the whole thing.
They have to listen.
That's right. And people don't listen. So if you can write it out or speak it out, then at least you're getting it out all the way, because people don't listen. And it's just something that happens. I mean, my mission in life is to teach people how to listen. But until that happens, we've got to get our stories out one way or another. So holidays.
Happy holidays, everyone. Happy COVID holidays. I hope you're all healthy.
Yes.
Managing, and maybe this is the time to reflect and start over with a new holiday tradition. What works? What did you have to do this year that was different? And maybe what did you do this year that was better, that worked for you?
Right.
And maybe make it a new holiday tradition.
Yeah, it's an adventure.
Yeah, pray for all of you that are alone, that you get to have someone to reach out to, to speak to.
And I love that, Kevin, that you recognize, because I didn't know if I was going to get to see my grandkids this year. And if that was the case, then I was going to be okay with it, and I was going to be alone, and I was going to be okay with it. I was going to make the best of it, and I had already determined in my heart. And I think that that's what you're talking about, is like, let's make the best holiday that we can.
Yeah, regardless of the circumstances, maybe find a new holiday tradition of reaching out to the people that matter to you in a different way, in a way that matters, in a way that
has more meaning, actually.
Has more meaning, has more meaning with the holiday. I mean, it's not all about the Christmas tree and gifts. It's about what happened. It's about what God did for us.
It so is, yeah.
So,
and even a lot of people just don't have the extra cash for gifts.
Yeah.
And so it really is about family. It's about relationship. It's about making new traditions. And I think it's a wonderful opportunity if we can embrace it.
Yeah, let's try something new. So that's it for today.
We are going to have a prayer time if you want to stick with us. If not, we believe in you.
We want to hear from you. We want to hear your stories.
If you like this podcast, please rate and review, because that's how other people can find us. And we really want to spread this message.
Father, I just pray that you would reach out to all of those who are alone this year, who are struggling because they can't be around their family or they can't be around the ones they love. I pray that you would be there for them, to be present in their lives, and to remind them of the gift that you did give us, the gift that matters the most, the gift of grace, the gift of your Son. And I pray that people would remember what Christmas is about and why it matters to all of us, and that even though we may be alone, we're not always alone. You're always with us, Lord. And I just pray that we would have peace, and you would bless those who are struggling with your presence and your peace in their hearts.
Father, I thank you so much for this podcast and that people are telling their stories and they're hearing stories. And Father, I think that one of the things is so hard is that when we come out, we're afraid of losing our family because we don't want to be alone. And we have this huge fear of being alone. And I don't know where that comes from, but Lord, help us to realize that being alone can be a really amazing, wonderful thing, even if it's for just a period of time. And Lord, I thank you that you are the God of healing. And I think of Kevin and his story and how he didn't want to forgive and then he did, and the restoration that came with that. Lord, life is so short, and I pray that as we walk through our process, because it is a process, we don't get to jump from being hurt to being healed in one day, that it is a process, and that we can know you are with us every step of the way. And Lord, that we don't have to do this alone. In fact, we don't want to do this alone. And telling our story feels hard. It feels like shame. And yet, when we share our story, and I think of two people that shared their story with me in the last week that they were really ashamed of because they were in recovery, and it took them 5 times in rehab. And the fact that they shared that story with me gave me hope for my own family, somebody who's struggling. And so, Lord, our stories matter. As hard as they are, as ugly as they may be, Lord, that our stories matter, and that speaking the words is going to make a difference, and that stuffing it down is never, ever the best option. And Lord, help us to live in a way that we're thriving rather than in that survival mode where we're reacting to everything. And Lord, I just thank you that you're such a good God, that there is healing in every kind of situation. In your Son's holy name, amen.
Amen.